In his introduction to Orientalism, Seth attempts to establish the Orient as an entity, a construct that is binary opposite of the Occident and from which the Occident derives its identity, an entity that many believe is losing its Oriental status. Thus, in this essay, Seth maps the origin of the concept of Orient, its early usage, and its current status. The British, the French, and the Americans have different perceptions about the Orient. This is because, unlike the Americans, the French and the British have a long history with the Orient. In fact, the Orient holds a special place in the European Western experience because of their closely knit association. To Europe, Orient represents the oldest and richest colonies that has influenced the culture, lifestyle, and language of the West. However, after the Second World War, America rose to power and approached the Orient the way Britain and France once did. As such, to America, Orient represents countries like Japan, Korea, and Indochina, and following America's recent economic and political exploits, countries in the Middle East are also included in America's perception of the Orient. In the academic context, individuals teaching, researching, or studying the Orient are termed as Orientalists, irrespective of the discipline he or she is otherwise involved in. The body of knowledge these individuals thereby produce are termed as Orientalism. Within the academic tradition, Orientalism then acts as a subject of study which provides general understanding of the Orient. As a concept, Orient can be understood as one that is epistemologically and ontologically in contrast to the Occident, a distinction which forms the basis for epics, theories, and accounts about the Orient by authors, novelists, theorists, poets, and economists. In fact, Disraeli, in his novel Tancred, talks about how the East was seen by the West as a carrier, something the West could be passionate about. This, along with European cultural hegemony, allowed the West to create a branch of knowledge for studying in academic institutions, for presenting in museums, and for reconstructing colonial history. The concept of Oriental thus emerged as an outcome of unchallenged sovereign Western consciousness. This concept was based on general ideas about the Orient and is a product of Western desires, repression, and projections without any resistance from the Orient. This makes Orient a man-made construct. However, it is not a mere imaginary entity. The Orient has a past, a tradition of thought, and a language that came into existence because the Orient allowed the West to orientalize them. Thus, the hierarchical relationship between the Orient and the West exists not because the West found the Orient to be Oriental, because the Orient allowed the West to orientalize them. Thus, the hierarchical relationship between the Orient and the West exists not because the West found the Orient to be Oriental, but because the Orient let the West orientalize them without resistance. Thus, in Flaubert's account of Kuchuk Hamen, he describes her as a typical Oriental woman. This representation is so because she is being represented by the one who holds power in the power equation. Seth fears that such accounts give rise to mutilation and discrepancies, which in turn are born out of generalization. He also feels that knowledge produced by the Western scholar is non-political. There is no means of separating a scholar from the society to which he belongs. Seth says this is because a scholar is a product of the society, not free from the class and social beliefs. This makes it difficult to produce knowledge that is impartial, scholarly, and unbiased. In other words, a scholar's inhibitions and impact of harsh reality on the scholar prevents him from producing knowledge that is non-political. Moreover, Said is of the opinion that true knowledge is not political, and all political knowledge is not necessarily true knowledge. He suggests that Americans or European scholars studying the Orient are influenced by imperialist and individual opinion, but this is not an inert fact to scholars. As to West's motives behind studying the East, there are many. This includes cultural interests accompanied by material, political, and military interests, making Orient varied and complicated place in the field of Orientalism. Historically and materialistically speaking, in the beginning of the late 18th century, Said's Orientalism was regarded as a corporate institution for dealing with the Orient. It provided validation, authorization, and statements and description regarding the Orient. Orientalism was considered as a discourse that would help the Western culture construct the Orient politically, socially, ideologically, and imaginatively in post-Enlightenment period. Orientalism, therefore, is not a work of fiction. It is not a mere structure of lies and myths. Rather, it's a veridic discourse that is built on West's positional flexibility, wherein the West holds a superior position on account of West's ascent of power in the post-Renaissance period. The book Orientalism then is a system of knowledge about the Orient that incorporates ideas provided by varied individual writers, including pioneers like William Jones and Nerval. Said sums up Orientalism as something that is not a political subject, neither a collection of texts about Orient, not a representation of Western imperialist ideas, but rather he describes it as distribution of geopolitical awareness, elaboration of geographical distinction, and connotations about the Orient created and maintained through philological recognition, scholarly discovery, psychological analysis, and so on. Many modern-day thinkers believe that Orient is losing its Orientalism. A French journalist, for example, on his visit to Beirut found that it bears no resemblance to European representation of the Oriental Beirut. Even the term Orientalism seems to be losing preference in the academic tradition due to its ambiguity and its association with European colonialism. Said, however, believes that Orientalism is important and will survive academically in Orientalist doctrines and theses. As such, Said's Orientalism is a hallmark text in the post-colonial studies. Said says that Orientalism unilaterally determines what can be said about the Orient, but that it is the whole network of interest inevitably brought to bear on any occasion when that peculiar entity, the Orient, is in question. How this happens is what this book tries to demonstrate. It also tries to show that European culture gained in strength and identity by setting itself off against the Orient as a sort of surrogate and even underground self. Said belief to speak of Orientalism, therefore, is to speak mainly, although not exclusively, of a British and French cultural enterprise, a project whose dimensions take in such disparate realms as the imagination itself, the whole of India and the Lebanon, the biblical text and the biblical lands, the spice trade, colonial armies and a long tradition of colonial administrators, a formidable scholarly armies, and a corpus innumerable Oriental experts and hands, an Oriental professorate, a complex array of Oriental ideas, many Eastern sects, philosophies, and wisdoms domesticated for local European use. The list can be extended more or less indefinitely. Orientalism was written in 1978 to do away with the romanticized images often associated with the East. The book is divided into 3 chapters. The scope of Orientalism, Orientalist structures and restructures, and Orientalism now. Orientalism was influenced by thinkers like Chomsky, Foucault, and Gramsci. As such, the study of Orientalism has very little to contribute, except to acknowledge it tactically. But the phenomenon of Orientalism, as such studies, deals principally not with the correspondence between Orientalism and the Orient, but with the internal consistency of Orientalism and its ideas about the Orient, despite or beyond any correspondence or lack thereof with the real Orient.